As this is ostensibly an art law channel, by way of a change today, some actual art law for you. And what prompted this? It was a comment where somebody said, if I stole the crown jewels but then gave them back, would I commit an offence? Well, the answer is yes, you would now, but prior to 1964, no, you wouldn't have. So let me explain what I'm on about. You've seen the James Bond film Dr. No, and if you remember, I'll put a little picture or something. But there's a bit in there where James is in Dr. No's lair. I just love that film. I thought you were something special, but it turns out you're just a stupid policeman. But anyway, as he's walking past a picture, he looks a little bit surprised. Why is that? Well, that picture is Goya's Duke of Wellington. And the year before the film came out, it had been stolen from the National Gallery. But had it been stolen actually by Spectre and Dr. No? Actually, no, it hadn't. It had, well, actually it hadn't, but people thought it had been stolen by a chap called Kempton Bunton. He was a pensioner, and he very much objected to the fact that pensioners had to pay for television licenses. And he said, well, if you're going to fork out all these millions buying a painting, why didn't you use that to just get pensioners free TV licenses? So he wanted to raise publicity. So apparently he went to the National Gallery and he swiped the painting. And he kept it for 4 years. Now eventually the authorities got a message saying, if you want your painting back, give £40,000 towards getting pensioners free licenses. And he later returned the painting. He left it in a lost and found locker at a railway station. I mean, you know, the police obviously thought this was an organised art heist and everything. It's like, how can you get such a valuable painting out of the National Gallery? Turns out you basically just climb through an open window in an alleyway. But eventually he handed himself into the police and said, yeah, I did it. So the police prosecuted him, as it would have been back then, because this was before the days of the Crown Prosecution Service. And he was charged with theft. But there was a problem, because what is the definition of theft? Well, theft is the dishonest appropriation of property belonging to another with the intention to permanently deprive. That is an element of the offence that the prosecution have to prove. And his defence was, well, I was going to give it back. So there was no intention to permanently deprive you of it. I was just going to keep it for a bit. And actually the theft prosecution failed with regards to the painting itself. However, they didn't recover the frame. So he was convicted of stealing the frame. Now, just to explain this intention to permanently deprive, you have to intend to keep something or treat it as if you were the owner. So let's say, for instance, I borrow some batteries from you and I give you them back when they're flat. Well, have I stolen the batteries? Well, actually, by the time I return them to you, they're useless. So that counts as permanently depriving. Also, what if, you know, you've got a ticket to see Taylor Swift and I swipe that, but I give it you back the day after the gig? Well, it's useless by then, isn't it? So again, that counts as permanently depriving. But what if somebody nicks a car? You know, some young hoodlum steals your car and abandons it somewhere. Well, that wouldn't amount to theft. So that's how we have the offence of twocking, taking without consent, which is just when you take a car without the owner's permission. You commit an offence, even if you actually don't intend to keep it. Now, hopefully there'll be some old Bill in the comments section. And you might remember when this offence was called taking and driving away. TDA. Sorry, I'll just get the ocean in the background for you. There you go. So yeah, TDA, or as the police euphemistically used to call it, well, not euphemistically, touching the dog's backside. What's he up for, governor? He's up for a bit of touching the dog's, you know what. So these are all offences that are created to get round this. But anyway, back to old Mr. Bunton. There was obviously a lacuna there, because theoretically now, somebody could go into any art gallery, steal a painting and just leave it back to the art gallery in their will, and they wouldn't have committed an offence. So they introduced Section 11 of the Theft Act 1968, and that makes it an offence to remove an article that is on public display in a location, whether it's a building or say a park, that the public have access to with a view to actually having a look around. So that covers art galleries, museums, sculpture parks. So, you know, no point me going and trying to go up to the Hepworth galleries and the Hepworth Garden in a minute and swipe 4 circles, which is one of my favourite pieces of work by her. She's really interesting, Barbara Hepworth. I know you all like trivia and diversions. She always tried to claim that she actually just did all the artwork herself. So whenever she had visitors, she used to hide them, she used to lock them in her shed. And one of her interns was Terry Frost, who later became a massively famous artist in his own right. And he was locked in there so long, eventually there was a trickle of liquid came from underneath the door. So, you know, anyway, that is an aside. She's quite interesting, Barbara. I mean, she's obviously very connected with Cornwall, even though she's a Yorkshire lass, which presumably is why she ended up doing what she did. You know, that's such a Yorkshire way to go, isn't it? Set fire to yourself while drinking. But yeah, so they introduced Section 11 of the Theft Act, which, like I say, now makes it an offence to even temporarily remove something from an art gallery or a museum or any sort of place like that. So there you go, have I covered everything I wanted to cover? I actually did make some notes on one of the little kiddie notebooks that they give you in the Tate. They give some really good stuff to kids, but they don't specifically say it's for kids, so I always like to help myself. Right, so where am I today? Oh yeah, if you did find, you know, hope you found that vaguely useful, vaguely informative, vaguely accurate. If you did, please consider subscribing to Dan's channel, because like I say, he's well on his way to 1 million subscribers now, so see if you can help him do that. But yeah, I am in St Ives, because I thought, you know, it's quite an arty sort of place, and I really do like it here. It was a nightmare getting parked today, it's so busy. And also, it was like winter in Truro, so I just wore all my winter clothes. And when I got here, it was cracking the flags, which is why I don't have my sun hat or my sunglasses. So I will go and edit this soon before I end up with a melanoma or something. But I'll try and find you somewhere nice, because I'm actually on a place called the Island. Up there's a really nice chapel. There's also the Coast Guard station, where in winter, when it's not so busy, they will actually let you go in there and play with the radar. It's really good fun. Also, a little while ago, a couple of years ago, there were a pod of 3 humpbacked whales that were floating up and down the coast, and all the proper whale watchers were up there trying to spot them. But there's also a minke whale who lives around here. And normally you get really excited when you see him. It's like, oh, it's the minke whale, it's the minke whale. But because everyone's looking for the humpback whales, this poor minke whale sort of pops up. It's like, yeah, it's the whale. Oh no, it's just that minke whale. Get out of the way, we're trying to get a photograph of the humpback whales and everything. Poor thing.
Hello.
Although as one whale expert pointed out to me, to quote him, he said, you know, for flipping, he didn't say flipping, but for flipping big mammals, they aren't half good at hiding. Right, I'll just pan around so you can see the view. Incidentally, St Ives is the patron saint of lawyers, although, as I found out after I recorded a video in the local church here, the very nice vicar pointed out and said, actually, that's a different St Ives. I suppose also, it wouldn't be one of my videos, would it, without me precariously walking along a cliff path. Oh, by the way, thanks to the person in the comments who pointed out that every time I said perilous, I actually meant to say parlous. I actually had to look that word up, but it's a great word, and I will be using it from now on. I hope you can see behind me some really nice rocks. Hang on.